Chapter 1. He broke camp at sunset, packing his gear into his Kelty pack, everything going back where it had come from. He was comfortable with the routine of the act. It gave him a feeling that some things were consistent, and hoped that some things would remain so. After packing, he pulled the camouflage pack cover over the pack, securing it at the top and the bottom so that an errant tree branch wouldn't pull it off at the wrong time. Shrugging on his Black Hawk chest pouch, he picked up the pack by the sides and, lifting it over his head, settled it onto his shoulders. He jumped up and down to get the pack just so and buckled the waist belt, pulling it just a little tighter. He wondered to himself how much more weight he was going to lose. Not that it was a bad thing. His trek so far was burning the soft life off him 1 pound at a time, and every day he felt both younger and much, much older. He picked up his rifle and draped the sling over his neck and shoulder. He set out cautiously, stopping every few minutes to listen to the sounds of the forest. So far, so good. Just birds saying goodnight to the sun, and the last few crickets of the season looking for love in the twilight. As the fading light turned the world from technicolor to gray and black, he paused for a moment to look up at the darkening sky. The stars were much brighter now that there were virtually no electric lights to blind suburban man to the wonders of the universe. Well, he thought, we really were a few short footsteps from the Dark Ages. Continuing on, he consulted his USGI tritium compass every so often and adjusted his course as he needed to. After moving a click and a half, he again stopped and removed his canteen from his hip belt. He took a long pull of the tepid water and swallowed. He stowed the canteen and moved forward, even more slowly than before, using every bit of his somewhat rusty skills to make as little noise as possible. After 2 hours and then some, he saw a break in the trees, marked only by a band of twinkling stars through the leaves. He stopped and took a knee, loosening his right pack strap and unbuckling the waist belt of his pack. Rolling his shoulder, he shifted the weight of the pack to his left and slid it to the ground at his left heel. He then dropped to the prone position, pointing his rifle at the road that lay 20 meters to his front. Shivering slightly as the chill of the night crept up on him, he listened for activity on the roadway. The sound of a motor, a cough, muffled voices, a radio braking squelch, the distinctive whir of a thermal sight of a tow launcher mounted to a Humvee. After a half hour of hearing what he wanted, nothing, he again rose to one knee and adjusted his left shoulder strap, then replaced the pack on his back. The cold sweat on his t-shirt made him colder still as the pack resettled on his spine. Pulling the straps tight, he left the waist strap unbuckled in case he needed to dump the pack in a hurry. He slowly made his way to the top of the brush that lined the two-lane state highway in front of him, and promptly walked into a rusty wire fence. "Damnation," he hissed. The rusty fence was put there by the state to keep random and easily deterred trespassers from despoiling the wood surrounding the reservoir where he had refilled his canteens and spent the day. He felt the wire with his bare left hand and determined that it was thin enough. Reaching into the left accessory pocket of his chest rig, he pulled out his trusty Leatherman tool and unfolded it. Cutting carefully, with his attention still focused mainly on listening for the sounds of approaching danger, he clipped the wire in 2 areas about 30 inches apart and down 4 layers of wire. Restowing his Leatherman, he pulled the wire towards him and folded the cut area down. He quickly crossed the fence and, turning, pulled the wire back into place as best he could by touch. He turned to the road and took a knee, looking both left and right for signs of approaching vehicles, or something or someone waiting quietly on the shoulder. Seeing and hearing nothing but normal night sounds, he quickly rose and darted across the road, his pack thumping against his back with every step, his rifle held at high port in both hands. Reaching the far side of the road, he crashed through the first row of pucker bush that is so common on roadsides, and stopped. He flopped to the prone and peered over his rifle at his back trail. After several minutes of listening to his heart return to a normal rhythm, he stood and buckled his belt, turned on one heel, and slowly and deliberately moved through the woods, keeping the highway as best he could 200 meters to his left. He again made camp in a wood. It wouldn't be dawn for a few more hours, but according to his map, this was the last significant patch of undeveloped land on his route for about 10 miles. And between that patch of land and this was the turnpike, 8 lanes of potential danger. He had several miles of semi-rural land to cross and at least 2 of suburban track houses to pass safely through. He ate a cold MRE beef stew and dug a small cat hole to take care of other matters. He buried both his waste and the MRE packet in the same hole. He had stopped outside of a dense stand of oak trees growing from a wild pile of bracken and vines. He risked a brief red-filtered search with his LED flashlight and found what he was looking for in a few moments. On hands and knees, he followed the small game trail into the thicket, wriggling on his belly when his pack hung up on the dense vegetation. Reaching the clear spot at the base of the 3 oaks, he listened tensely for a few minutes. He then took off the pack and removed the cover. Rolling out his Insulite ground pad, he unrolled his sleeping bag and laid his poncho over it. Fishing around inside the outside pocket of his pack, he removed a small bundle of green bungee cords and quickly assembled a low poncho hooch over his bed. He removed a pair of socks from the pocket and threw them onto his sleeping bag. He then sprinkled dried leaves over the top of the poncho and quickly crawled back down the game trail. He then covered the trail as best he could in the dark in an effort to disguise his path. Reaching his hooch, he again covered his pack with the cover. After listening to the sounds of the night and detecting no apparent threat, he removed his chest pouch and laid it next to the sleeping bag and placed his rifle on top of that. He removed his boots and socks and put the socks in the bag. Dusting his feet with foot powder, he pulled on a pair of dirty but dry socks, crawled into his bag, and drifted off to a fitful sleep.